Hello and welcome to Tête à Tête, France 24's flagship interview show. Our guest today is Mark Perlmutter. He is an American hand surgeon who volunteered at a hospital in Gaza a few months ago, and he joins us from Raleigh in North Carolina. Thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure.
So you went to Gaza from the end of March through the first half of April, more precisely at the European hospital, which is located in Khan Younis, at the southern end of the Gaza Strip. You've been over the past decades to war zone. Areas were hit by earthquake, ground zero after 9/11, but you say you never saw what you saw in Gaza. So what exactly did you see there?
Well, the overwhelming difference between the other trauma zones that I've been to is that almost exclusively the injured were not military combatants, but rather civilians. And indeed, we didn't see one military combatant the whole time we were there, either around alive and well and walking or as a patient. 90% of the patients that we saw are just like that image that you're showing, children. They were toddlers or younger. They were exposed to bomb blasts, covered with smoke, like you're seeing, horrible whole body burns or 50% body burns. There were shrapnel injuries, and in particular, there were sniper injuries. I personally saw two children that were shot twice, once in the chest, right over where I would put my stethoscope over their heart, and once on the side of the head. No child gets shot twice by mistake. The image you're showing now are illegal white phosphorus bombs. They're not approved by any military system except to be used within your own borders. For example, Ukraine can use them in the Ukrainian territory for defense, but in every other part of the world, they're illegal. And then the cluster bombs, which we saw evidence of, were illegal as well.
I want to go back to obviously what you said about children and snipers. You're saying that they were probably targeted, that this was not an accident, but by design. Obviously, the Israeli Defense Forces are saying that they're not targeting civilians and especially not children. Do you maintain your allegations that what you saw was not an accident?
Absolutely. No child gets shot twice by mistake. We're all, the surgeons that were there were adept at high velocity bullet wounds. The shot to the chest completely evacuated the chest of the child. Everything between his shoulder blades in the back was missing. The brains were pouring out of the other side of their head. There were definitive high-velocity bullet wounds. We have X-rays that were printed in the New York Times and republished in the Haaretz newspaper in Jerusalem in Hebrew, copies of the X-rays of which the metadata proves it was real because it was challenged whether it was real. This is a bullet in the head of a child. The weapon, the wounds that we saw were definitively high velocity. They weren't pistol caliber rounds. And one of the child, the father told me, the father or uncle, I didn't get the ID, but the attending male with him said that he felt the boy ripped out of his hand, looked for him, 10 meters later saw him lying on the ground. When he saw him get shot the second time, he didn't even know he was shot in the chest. He brought him to the ambulance. The ambulance brought him to us. When I rolled the kid over looking for other damage, his brains poured into my hand, and there were no organs between his shoulder blades. His heart was gone, his lungs were gone, his spine was gone. That only happens with high-velocity bullet wounds.
Right. Can you tell us, I mean, you were in the European hospital. It was evacuated by Israeli order since then, back in July. But concretely, how was it possible to tend to those patients pouring in terms of medical personnel and in terms of medical supply? Obviously, entering Gaza itself is a challenge.
Well, entering Gaza now is impossible. The IDF and the Israeli right-wing fascist government has made it absolutely impossible to get aid into the country. I, as a surgeon, can go back because I'm not of Palestinian origin, but any new person coming back into the country cannot be first or second or third generation Palestinian, or you're not allowed back in the country. I cannot bring a bottle of acetaminophen with me. Because they'll not only bounce me out of the country, they won't let me in, they won't let my whole team in. I have to stay for a month when 99% of volunteerism is for a 7 to 10 day period. Their new regulations completely eliminate all volunteerism. Now, when I was there was no aid going in. We saw 2 miles, 3 miles, 6 kilometers of trucks lining up to go in. Remember, Gaza needed 500 to 700 trucks a day to stay functional on October 6th. On October 8th, there were no trucks going in. When we left Rafah, still through an open border, there were 30 miles, 65, 70 kilometers of trucks, 8 wide, bumper to bumper, all turned off, all with big signs on them that said Oxfam, UNHCR, every medical relief company in the world, from every Western country in the world was lined up, ready to go into Gaza to provide the relief. Trucks of potatoes and watermelons, all denied entry. A truck of dead chickens just cooking in the sun, all denied entry into Gaza. Denied entry by Israel. They definitively used famine as a weapon of war to support the genocide that your new foreign minister says doesn't exist.
I want to go back to this issue of supply. The U.S. government recently, in a letter, said that Israel should do more to allow aid in. If not, there could be consequences in terms of weapon supply. We're hearing European countries threatening to suspend those kinds of weapon supplies to Israel. Do you think that this is changing, or this is just talk and not much is changing on the ground?
The Western world is paying for the bombs that are burning children to death. They're paying for the bullets that shredded those children. We are complicit in this. By every definition that the UN and the Geneva Convention, of which Israel signed in 1951, by every definition of every war treaty, they're committing a genocide. They are creating the Holocaust that stimulated the development of Zionism, that had a good role early on in Israel, but now it's being exploited to create this genocide.
I want to go back to I want to go back to the hospital situation. I mean, recently Israel raided another hospital, this time in the north of the Gaza Strip. Israel has claimed that hospital, as well as other civilian infrastructures like mosques or schools, were being used by Hamas to hide and even to conduct operation. You said earlier in the interview that you had seen no sign of that. But isn't there a grain of truth to this, that Hamas might be using those hospitals to hide, at least?
So in the United States, when a shooter comes into a school, because we have very poor gun laws in the United States, if a shooter comes into a school and starts killing children, we, as you would in France, sends in a SWAT team to kill the shooter. What Israel does is bomb the school to get the shooter. As you know, they have a program called Lavender, and that justifies, to them, not to the world, but to them, killing of a mass number of civilians to get a suspected Hamas fighter. They don't wear the word Hamas on the side of their shoulder. They don't wear blue tape around their upper arms and helmets like they do in Ukraine. These are civilians these are soldiers that blend, combatants that blend into the population, but without the population's consent. The population is not shielding these people. They don't know who they are. They have no idea who they are. And when you talk to Palestinians, they hate Hamas. They like Jews more than they like Hamas. They can't stand Israel. I love Jews. I'm of Jewish heritage. I can't stand the government of Israel. I love the United States government. I can't stand my ex-president Trump. You're allowed to hate your government and love the people. And that's what the Palestinians do. 2% of living Palestinians actually voted in the last election, which was almost 2 decades ago. It's not like Hamas is the elected representatives of 2.5 million people. Hamas has thrown upon them. The average Palestinian hates Hamas for what they've done to Israel, hates Hamas for how they ruined the country and what they've done to the country. They knew that this would happen. Hamas knew that this would be an overreaction because they know that Benny Netanyahu, who actually gave weapons to Hamas to get rid of the Palestinian Authority, they knew how he would overreact. He is using Hamas as an excuse to kill the innocent Palestinian. That's how you commit a genocide. That's how you get control of the natural gas that's off the border of northern Gaza. That is why they dehumanize. That's why they stop aid from coming in. That's why they bomb mosques. That's why they blow up schools, even UNRWA schools. That's why they destroy fresh water supplies and sewage treatment plants. It's all to dehumanize the population. It's all to kill the innocent Palestinian so that the land can be reclaimed, just as it is in the West Bank.
Mark Perlmutter, that's all we have time for. I want to thank you very much for your testimony here on France 24, and I want to thank you all for watching this show.